When survival becomes everything, what do you lose? Because at first, it sounds reasonable. Survive, protect yourself, make sure you're never powerless again. But there's a line, a quiet line, where survival stops being a necessity and becomes an identity. And once you cross it, something changes. You stop asking what's right and start asking what's profitable. That's where Kakuzu lives. Not just as a mercenary, not just as a member of the Akatsuki, but as a man who turned survival into a system and slowly removed everything else. Kakuzu wasn't born greedy. He wasn't always cold, calculating, and detached. Like everyone else, he started with a purpose, a mission, a belief that what he was doing mattered. But something happened along the way. Something that broke his trust in people completely. Because when you dedicate yourself to a system, when you risk your life for it, and that same system betrays you, it leaves a mark. Not just anger, but realization. A realization that loyalty doesn't guarantee safety, that effort doesn't guarantee reward, that people aren't as reliable as they pretend to be. And once that realization sets in, it changes how you move. Because if people can't be trusted, then what can? For Kakuzu, the answer was simple. Money. Not because money is emotional, but because it's consistent, predictable. It doesn't lie. It doesn't betray you. It doesn't change its value based on how you feel. It gives you something the world failed to give him. Control. And from that moment on, Kakuzu stopped valuing people. He started valuing transactions. Because transactions are clean, clear, no hidden intentions, no emotional risk. You do a job, you get paid. No loyalty required, no trust needed, just results. And in a world full of betrayal, that kind of simplicity feels safe. But here's where it gets deeper. Because Kakuzu doesn't just chase money, he builds his entire identity around it. Every decision he makes is filtered through one question. Is it worth it? Not morally, not emotionally, but financially. And that changes everything. Because once survival becomes your only priority, everything else becomes expendable. Relationships, morality, empathy, all of it gets pushed aside. Because none of it guarantees survival the way money does. And over time, that mindset hardens. It becomes who you are. You stop seeing people as individuals. You start seeing them as value, targets, opportunities, assets. And that's what makes Kakuzu so dangerous. Not because he's chaotic, but because he's calculated. Everything he does makes sense within his system. A system where survival is the highest goal, and money is the most reliable tool to achieve it. But there's a cost. Because when you remove emotion, when you remove trust, when you remove connection, you don't just protect yourself from betrayal, you isolate yourself completely. And that's the irony of Kakuzu's philosophy. In trying to avoid being hurt by people, he removes people entirely. But humans aren't built to function like that. Because no matter how logical it seems, no matter how efficient it is, something is lost when everything becomes transactional. Because meaning doesn't come from survival alone. It comes from connection, from purpose beyond yourself, from things that don't have a price tag. And Kakuzu gave all of that up. Not because he didn't understand it, but because he no longer believed it was worth the risk. And that's what makes his mindset so real. Because it's not extreme in an obvious way. It's practical. It's understandable. It's the kind of thinking people slowly adopt after being betrayed enough times, after trusting the wrong people, after realizing that loyalty doesn't always protect you. So they build walls. They become more focused on themselves, more focused on stability, more focused on survival, until one day they wake up and realize they've removed everything that made life meaningful, and all that's left is survival itself. That's Kakuzu, a man who mastered survival, but lost everything else in the process. Because survival without meaning isn't living. It's existing. And there's a difference. But here's the hardest part. From his perspective, he's not wrong. Because in a world where people betray you, where systems fail you, where nothing is guaranteed, focusing on survival makes sense. It's logical. It's safe. It works. But just because something works doesn't mean it's complete. Because survival is the foundation of life, not the purpose of it. And once you forget that, you start building a life that protects you, but doesn't fulfill you. And that's the quiet tragedy of Kakuzu. Not that he became greedy, but that he stopped believing in anything beyond survival. So now the question comes back to you. If the world taught you that nothing is guaranteed, that people can't be trusted, that survival is the only thing you can control, would you choose to protect yourself at all costs? Or would you risk losing everything again for something that actually means something?